Hi, Ruchi.
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I think this is going to be the last Rob and Ruchi show before the new year.
Oh, wow. The last one of 2020.
Didn't come soon enough, probably.
Are you excited for break?
I am. I am. I think that this year has just been incredible on so many levels. But I think, yeah, I'm ready. But more importantly, I know our clients are ready. I
Yeah.
mean, they are shutting down.
Yeah.
They are shutting down. It's just going to be a unique time for all of us to just take a real break. So
Yeah.
it's going to be good.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of fatigue on my part as well. I think both from like colleagues and also clients. And it's interesting because I think today we wanted to end the year with a topic that's both reflective and forward looking. We're going to talk about reskilling. And that's been on my mind a lot, actually, as we think about how do we start 2021
Mm.
with a bang. Take this time to sit back, reflect, refresh. But as we think about kind of the new competencies that are emerging, the new needs that businesses have, I'm really curious as to what you've been seeing and what you're preparing for next year in terms of the really big skills that are going to need to be taught to
Yeah.
businesses and clients.
It's a great topic and one that I've personally been giving a lot of thought to. Again, as we all reflect, as we all step back and start thinking about what we've just been through, because it's really going to take a while for us to absorb what just happened. And then I think it's going to be even longer until we figure out what's that comfort zone.
Mm.
What are the new skills? What are the new competencies in a new reality where metrics of performance are going to be different as well? So, in thinking about this, I've come up with a little bit of a list. Let me throw a couple of them out. Let's talk about them. Let's get your reflection on them, and let's see where the conversation goes. So, interestingly enough, when we talk about reskilling, we talk about emerging competencies. The top one that I am literally seeing around the world in different countries, in different companies, in different industries is what I'm calling strategic mindset, where the competency, the emerging skill set is around giving people the chance to think differently about their business, their environment, their work, their relationships, much more at a strategic level than at a tactical level. So I'm seeing that. How about you?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting observation. I mean, from an instructional viewpoint, as I think about the kind of products that I'm building, the kind of needs analysis I'm doing, I'm seeing two things. I'm seeing one, something a little bit more aligned to your strategic mindset, something that's about the skills that a lot of people on the front line might not have needed to cultivate as deeply or as quickly as counterparts. And then I think there's this other strand, people whose jobs are fundamentally changing.
Hmm.
So, you might have a business that's going from completely brick and mortar to more digital or tech enabled. And now you, as someone who's been kind of on the front line or in a brick and mortar store for ages, having to learn how to actually be, technically enabled, and learning a new pace of work and a new product. So that is actually very interesting to me because I think a lot of the leadership skills we see, a lot of the strategic mindset skills we see, there's going to be a higher value placed on that.
Hmm.
But then this other stuff
Yeah, the
is
other
much
stuff.
more urgent.
Right.
There's almost like a top of mind urgency around there. And especially now that learning is much more digital, whereas a lot of this stuff used to be modeled or hands on. It's very top of mind for me. How do we rapidly and effectively reskill people in those areas in the coming year?
Yep. No, I think you're right on that. And then as a follow up, I think it does go hand in hand with exactly what you just said, is the concept of what people are calling integrability.
Mm,
Integrability being the capability of being able to integrate into the new business model,
mm,
into the new reality of the digital economy, the digital workforce, and so forth. And while it's not agility, it is about being able to have different skills that you can integrate quickly. And I think, and I'm seeing this in one day, you may have to have 4 to 6 to 8 different skills to integrate in this new digital workforce.
Yeah, it's a different almost mandate from your employer, which
Hmm.
is really, I think, scary for a lot of people, especially in job insecure times that we're in. And then I think it's also scary for employers as you think about how do you get your workforce reskilled that quickly. And I
Yeah,
keep going back to quickly because I think
yeah,
time is always like the imperative. And what I'm often thinking about is like, what is the advice I would give to like a CLO or a training manager? What are the things that they should be focusing on now? I'm interested in your take, Rob, and then I'd love to offer some thoughts.
yeah. So I'll tell you a funny story. I'm working with a client. It's a global consumer packaged goods company. They're struggling with people upskilling in this new environment, as you said, quickly to understand interfunctionality. I'm in sales, but I have to work with marketing. I'm in manufacturing, but I have to work with sales. And people are really struggling with this quickness of understanding what other people are doing. But it's scary because wait a second, I've been, in my one function, and you know what's going to happen, Ruchi? I'll work here for 18 months and then I'll get my little promotion and then I'll go do a little tour of duty in this other functional area. And then, they'll send me over to Asia and then I'll do South America and then I'll do Europe. And, over the course of the next 12 to 14 years, I'll build my career and then I'll be a leader. Guess what? That's not happening. People need to know how are you going to develop and reskill in 6 to 12 months?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it comes down for me, I often think in terms of like step by step process. And
Mhm.
think about how I've seen it successfully work. Even before the pandemic, we were looking a lot at reskilling being a hot topic from 2017 and on, as AI got to be a big
Right.
focus, as we knew jobs would change as we knew it. And how I'm looking at this is three things. First, I think leaders really need to be able to understand what competencies match with their evolving business needs. I don't
Hmm.
think enough people take the time to evaluate and do a strong needs analysis for what great looks like for their workers.
Right. I agree. I think people take the easy path. Oh, I'm going to go to this conference or I'm going to get into my CLO, Chief Learning Officer work group on LinkedIn, and I pick up the topics. Okay, yeah, I need that competency too. I think you're absolutely right. They're not doing the deep needs assessment. But here's the thing, though. Do the people who are responsible for doing that have the skills to understand the business?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good point, and I know where you're going to go with this as well. But I
Yeah.
think like, not only are we trying to upskill them, but I also think that there is just an imperative that people have a hard time absorbing.
Hmm.
Um, I think it's very easy to get into the trap of saying, here are the competencies that make our business run, without kind of seeing how the business is evolving and
Yeah.
seeing how those competencies need to evolve. And I think, especially if you're running your own learning function, it's really important to have the finger on the pulse, both of your understanding of the business, to get to your point,
Right.
understanding the strategy, the just the financial functions,
Right.
where the business is going, but also what that means for the capabilities needed internally.
Hmm.
So that's, number one. I think number two is, once you have that knowledge of the competencies needed, you need to do a really, really honest evaluation of the gaps
Yeah.
and areas of opportunity. Where are your people currently at?
Yeah.
And where do they need to go? And how will that happen in order to get to those competency levels? And so I think there's a whole wide range of things you could do. Diagnostics, you could have, skills assessments. You could have them actually try the jobs.
Simulations, sure. Absolutely.
Absolutely. But I don't think that is done nearly enough.
No.
Performance evaluations are not enough.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I'll give you another quick story working with another client. And these are stories that are just, again, accelerating. Had a client come in and said, listen, I love one of your simulations, the one that's called Fundamentals of Business Leadership. We have 500 potential new frontline leaders. Here's what I want to do. I want to take your simulation. I want to put all 500 through the first quarter of the simulation, 16 different scenarios of being an
Mm.
effective leader. I'm going to look at the data. We're going to cut out 400 of them. we're going to take the top 100 and then we're going to push them through because we're going to take a look at what they're strong at and develop those. And then for the 400 that didn't make it, can you give me a report, an analysis of what are their gaps so that we can then start to develop them? But
Absolutely.
quickly, I mean, we're literally launching January 4th.
Absolutely. People want to start the year off strong. And that's, I think, the best way to do it when people are in a more malleable mindset.
Yeah.
So you've got, your first two steps here. You've got evaluate what the competencies are. Then you've got evaluate the gaps. I think the third one then is to really invest in L&D.
Yeah.
I might be biased here, I'll admit, but I genuinely believe that businesses who invest in learning and development and innovative learning and development see returns much faster and much more effectively than businesses who don't. You cannot anymore look at learning and training as kind of rote,
Yeah.
just like one-offs. These have to be continuous plans that are measured against what you want to see, like backwards plan that
Right.
journey for your people,
Right.
and then give them the opportunities.
Yeah, real true talent development, a
Mhm.
long-term strategic plan. And it's interesting. You've seen that the best companies actually really follow through. They
Mhm.
have strategies, they make the investments, and you see the business really prospering. And when things were disrupted, those companies that invested in their people, that had the agility skills, that had the strategic mindset, that were able to integrate easily, they are soaring.
Mhm.
So you're right. Absolutely.
I think the other thing that factors into all of this is scale. A lot of things that I think cause a little bit of heartburn with companies is the idea of doing all three steps given the scale. So you'll
Mm,
see, mid-sized companies and smaller companies be able to do this and kind of do due diligence. Sometimes when you're a larger or more distributed workforce, it's hard to do it at the same quality across the board.
right.
And so what I would suggest as we're looking at this is really leveraging technology to help that
Hmm.
scale. There's so many things like simulations, like diagnostics, all kinds of platforms that do curated learning pathways that can really help address and identify and then address needs of learners. And I think it really will help people who are in that driver's seat in client instances to investigate.
So let me ask a provocative question.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And I think at a smaller and medium sized level company, it's a lot easier to do that. At the large global size, when you're talking about 15,000, 20,000, 30,000, up to 100,000 employees, what's your opinion on adapting to culture and language?
Could you explain a little bit more of the question?
Yeah. So let's say somebody wants to do an initiative.
Mm,
They want to create skill, just like you said, make it digital, make it scalable,
mm,
push it out quicker than anyone's ever been able to do before
mm,
through all those different tools that you had just shared. But yet there's a interesting dynamic where that topic, whatever it is, whether it's a
mm.
leadership topic or a strategic thinking topic, it runs into cultural issues. It runs
Sure,
into language issues.
sure.
What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen this very often. I'm working on projects all throughout actually the year where we've had to think about what global relevance looks
Yeah.
like. And I think a couple of things. Like one is sometimes leadership concepts don't translate exactly the same, but fundamentally, conceptually, they
Hmm.
are the same. So it's really important to get, I think, owners from different regions to be
Mm.
able to lean in and say, this is how it will resonate with my population, but making sure everyone's aligned on the conceptual anchor of the
Yeah.
concept. I think the second part is, there's a very Western and North American bias in just how we do corporate L&D just in
Right.
general.
Yeah.
And I actually think that there is a huge imperative to move away from that. So I've seen kind of using Asia actually as a proxy to think about would this work in certain contexts has helped me really push my thinking from an instructional standpoint to almost de-North Americafy
Right.
my approach to learning. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I agree with you. However, I
Mm,
will serve up to you some evidence.
mm,
Over the course of the last couple of months, I've been privileged enough to work on projects that in my life I never would have had the chance to work on. So, for
Mm.
example, a wonderful pharmaceutical company in the Philippines has identified business acumen as a critical skill needed for existing and new leaders. I'm not going to get on a plane from North America to fly to Philippines to do a program, but we did it virtually. What was fascinating was how much I wanted to adapt to the culture, to the language, to the business market, to the healthcare market. I was almost shocked about how globalized, I don't want to use westernized, globalized, that those foundational elements of strategic mindset, financial management, relationship building in a healthcare system have actually become much more homogenized than I ever had thought about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, some of the things that we know are best in class or best practice have become globalized and are kind of readily accepted. The things that I see we have to tailor are not necessarily the concepts themselves, but how they're framed sometimes.
Mm,
So if you
yes,
think about something like coaching
yes,
in a North American context where we teach coaching as very relational and
yep,
partnership driven versus in some Asian contexts where there is like an expectation of top-down leadership,
yes,
and coaching is more evaluative or performance based, there's a necessity to think about how do you reframe in a way that still retains the concept of, say, grow, which is again very founded in future facing feedback,
right.
but also pays respect to some of the cultural mores of the context in which you're teaching.
Yep, absolutely. Again, we are so aligned on that. I'm in the middle of a global rollout of a coaching and feed forward simulation that's going global. And what we're doing is we're anchoring it in some core foundational concepts, but then adapting it to the cultural norms in a hierarchical situation. We're starting it that way, but then by the time you're done, it's a little bit more homogenized. Good.
Absolutely. I think this all kind of comes down back to this idea of like what are the big things that we need to keep in mind as we're looking at learning in
Yes.
2021, right? So if we're closing the loop on this, I
Yep.
think again, the three tips to leaders, one is to make sure that you understand the new skills that are needed, the new competencies that are needed. Two is to make sure you're doing that gap analysis so you understand what needs to be addressed. And three is investing in your L&D to make sure you have the most cutting edge and most appropriate solutions. And then underlying all of this is thinking about the language of L&D that you're speaking. I think
Mhm.
making sure that there are strong foundational concepts that resonate globally, but you're also taking some cultural context into mind as you make available the learning in a much bigger context than we usually would.
Right. And make it scalable and make it fast, as you
Make it
said.
fast. Yeah. Oof. Make it really fast.
Yeah. So put on your sprinting shoes, Ruchi. We are in for an incredible 2021.
I know it. Can't wait to connect again with you in the new year,
Good.
Rob.
All right, Ruchi, great. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, the viewers of this Rob and Ruchi show are going to get some good tips. And I look forward to seeing you in 2021. Be safe, be healthy, and thank you very much. We'll see you
You
soon.
too. You too. And everyone who's watching, if you have any thoughts on reskilling, the past year in L&D, or what you're thinking about ahead, please leave them in the comments below.
Yep, right below. Bye bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.